Hello and welcome to another video from the only source of information that you need to not only survive the current apocalypse but actually enjoy it. And today I'm just going to try to explain why I'm not addressing the current state of the world right now. I mean, I get a lot of questions about some of the weird stuff that's going on. And I want to address it publicly, but a lot of times I have to go talk to people privately because as a YouTuber, I get to see things that you people don't see who are not YouTubers. We get warnings in our email about what we can and can't do. When we post a video, they got a new thing now where you have to go through this long checklist like you're at the food stamp office. You know, I haven't committed a crime in the last 6 months or whatever. But the thing you get from YouTube is, like, are there any children in this video? So if you've got children in there, you've got to say yes. And then they look at the children to see if anything weird is going on, I guess, and whether or not the video is acceptable. But you have to admit to it. Like, are there any guns in the video? Is there any vulgarity in the video? Is there any violence? There's just a long list of things, and one of those things is anything politically questionable. And like, that's a pretty vague thing to ask somebody, because to me, there's nothing when you talk about politics, there's nothing questionable, because no matter what you say, on some level, it's going to be true. But lately, I've been getting warnings with this specifically mentioning specific nations. And I thought maybe I should read the warning. I mean, I can't imagine myself getting in trouble for reading the warning, but I just feel like, I don't want any kind of problems from YouTube. YouTube's got this computer program that goes through the video while you're uploading it, and it kind of checks for violence and nudity and vulgarity and stuff, but there are words that will red flag you. And so I thought, if I read this warning so that you can understand what I'm having to deal with, that I could get my YouTube channel taken down just for that, which isn't unusual. A lot of my videos get taken down. A lot of my videos get demonetized. And what it is like members of my family, my neighbors, just a few regular subscribers who hate me. There's a button on every video that says report. And so they'll just press that button, and then they get a questionnaire like, what did you see wrong with this video? And they'll say something about copyright or vulgarity or whatever. And then they take my video down, and they send me a message, and then I have to press my button, which says, I want to contest this. And it doesn't take long, usually a day or so, the video goes back up. And of course, then my family, my neighbors will complain again, and YouTube says, look, we already checked this video out, we're not taking it down again. So you only have to go through that once for each video. But I'll go ahead and summarize the most recent message I got from YouTube, or from the people that pay me, actually, which is some kind of separate organization. The message said something like, there is currently a war between Team A and Team B. If you say anything derogatory about Team A, or you say anything that indicates that you're siding with Team B, we can demonetize your YouTube video and perhaps your whole channel, or if you continue to engage in this, we will take your YouTube channel down. So hopefully you're aware that the world is having a few wars, and some of them are part of the Western world's agenda. You know, I mean, obviously all of them are, but most people are not paying attention to 98 of the wars. Probably only 2 of them are getting any publicity right now. And so I'm not going to mention the names of the countries that I was warned about. But I think a better approach to this is just to mention a few basic concepts that are found in the Bible that should help you to make a decision about who you should support and who you shouldn't support. Because Bible's pretty clear about it. Jesus said, he who lives by the sword shall die by the sword. Or he said something like that. He was speaking Greek, so it didn't sound like what I just said. And people say, oh, look, Jesus' teachings are so much better than any other teachings in the Bible. Well, that's not true. He was just repeating what was said over and over and over again in the Bible, but his words were translated properly. A lot of the other words are not. So you'll have things that say that those who support Baal shall die and go to hell. Well, a lot of what that is just a list of basically every religion, every country that existed at that time, including the ones that we think of as the good nations and the good religions. And all of those verses say, basically, it doesn't say you're going to go to hell. It'll say, like, you're going to Gehenna. Gehenna was like a valley that surrounded Israel. And only the children of poor people were sent there. It's like it was only during invasions. Like a country was coming to do war with Israel. So the rich people wanted to be protected, so they would send the poor people out as a first line of defense. And usually those people would all get wiped out. Poor people, probably just the military at that time. So a lot of the verses that specifically say those who live by the sword are going to die by the sword are kind of twisted to make it seem like those who fight for the bad guys are going to hell and those who fight for the good guys are going to heaven. But I promise you that's all wrong. That's a lie. Jesus died for the sins of all mankind. He didn't die for those who are washed in the blood or born it again or saved or sanctified or any of that nonsense. Trust me, if you travel to another country, everybody in that country believes they're God's chosen country. If you go to church at any religion, Christian or not, every religion believes they're God's chosen religion. So this is not unique. And there really isn't anything to support that any of those nations are more loved than any of the other nations. In fact, God's hatred of the nations is pretty well publicized from Genesis all the way to Revelation. So if you're struggling to determine which team to join, just know that God doesn't have anything good to say about any of the world's teams. We don't need to go into specifics. In fact, thinking about it makes me feel like if I was to explain the entire history of the world in support of anything, that it would be like acknowledging that there's some nation that's somehow superior. And that's really not the case at all. But I will say this. As a student of history, I can tell you some basics that are kind of weird. The world has always had wars. There's never been a moment when there was no war. But leading up to World War I, there really wasn't anything major going on. There were little skirmishes here and there. There were people who didn't like each other. And in fact, that's why World War I happened. World War I happened because there was so much peace that people had time to just sit around stewing about why there was peace. And so some insignificant nobody, Franz Ferdinand, who really was basically nobody, got assassinated by some whack job. And suddenly the whole world went to war. the people who went to war had been wanting a war for a long time, but they needed an excuse. And it wasn't because one team hated another team. It's just that when people get political power, it's like a drug. And after a while, it's not enough. You need more. And so everybody who was a ruler of a nation kind of wanted to rule more nations. So they used World War I as an excuse to conquer other lands. So when World War I was over, things were split amongst the victors, and everybody felt like they got a bad deal. That the losers felt they got a bad deal, and even the winners felt they got a bad deal because they didn't get enough extra resources, land, slaves, that kind of stuff. So historically, World War II wasn't really World War II. World War I was just more of World War II was just more of World War I. Because it just kept going on and on and on. I mean, even between, I guess 1918 is when it ended, and then 1939 it started over again. So that's 20 years. During that 20 years, there was a whole lot going on that we're never told about. I always remember that big speech that they always show on newsreels and such, where Roosevelt is saying, "Today, the Empire of Japan, in an unprovoked attack, bombed Pearl Harbor." Well, that's not really true. I mean, if you go back and look at the history of World War I and then World War II, Japan was getting attacked on a daily basis. In fact, the United States did this really treacherous trick. They didn't want to be the ones who started the war, so they started bombing Japan. The United States was bombing Japan for a year before Japan finally had enough and bombed Pearl Harbor. But the way they did it was they took all the American pilots and all the American planes, and they sanded off the part that said United States, and they put on their volunteer group, American volunteer group. And so when America was bombing Japan, their planes all had a different name wrote on them, and they did something in Congress to say that this is not our Air Force. This is some rogue American pilots who left the military, and they took their planes with them and they bombed Japan. So there's a lot of weirdness going on. But I mean, if you ask the vast majority of people who started World War II, they'll all say, well, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. No one ever mentions America bombing Japan for a year before Pearl Harbor happened. So just know that there are no good guys and bad guys in war. Every war from the beginning of time has been the War of Peleg, which happened shortly after the flood. The War of Peleg made a lot of people mad. When it was over, all the losers built up their militaries and struck back. When that war was over, the other team struck back. Every war, from the beginning of time to today, has been the bad guys versus the other bad guys. The Bible always presents it that way. God has no special team that he wants to win the wars. If you have any questions about this, I have about 300 Bible-based videos posted on the internet. Go watch those. Don't give me a list of 200 scriptures and ask me to explain with ancient Greek and Hebrew why those scriptures are mistranslated. I've got videos about that. It would take me 1,000,000 hours to get into a debate with whoever about this subject, but I've already invested that amount of time in all the videos I've already made. So if you ask me something stupid, I'm just going to say, go watch my other videos. Love y'all. If you don't want to survive, don't listen to me.